When did your partner's toxic ultimatum backfire completely? I am a pretty consistent person. I work as an electrician, I hit the gym 4 mornings a week, and I play in a recreational basketball league every Thursday night. My ex-girlfriend, Chloe, knew my schedule by heart because it hasn't changed in the 2 years we lived together. Last month, my league made it to the playoffs. I told Chloe about the championship game 2 weeks in advance. I even put it on the shared digital calendar. She said it was fine. But on the afternoon of the game, she walked into the living room and told me her parents were having a last-minute barbecue, and we were expected to be there by 6. I reminded her about the game. I told her I was the starting point guard and I couldn't just bail on the team for a burger. Her face shifted instantly. She told me I was being incredibly selfish for choosing a game with a bunch of sweaty guys over her family. I pointed out that the game had been scheduled for weeks, while the barbecue was announced 2 hours ago. That is when she pulled her favorite move. She looked me dead in the eye and said that her coworker, Jason, had been asking her out for months. She told me Jason would never choose a basketball game over her. She said she could walk out the door right now and have a man who actually prioritized her. Usually this is where I would panic. I would apologize, cancel my plans, and spend the evening feeling miserable at her parents' house just to keep the peace. But something snapped. I felt a weird sense of relief. I looked at her and said that Jason sounded like a very attentive guy, and she should probably give him a call. Chloe froze. She asked me what I meant. I told her the door was right there and I wasn't going to stop her. I told her I was tired of being threatened with a replacement every time I had a life outside of her. I grabbed my gym bag and my water bottle. I told her I hoped the burgers were good and walked out. I had the best game of my life. I didn't check my phone once. When I got back to the apartment, Chloe was sitting on the bed with her suitcase open, but it was empty. She was waiting for me to walk through the door and break down. She started crying and saying she didn't actually like Jason. She just wanted me to care more. I told her that if she cared about me, she wouldn't use other men as a weapon to get what she wanted. I told her the relationship was over. She spent the next 3 hours trying to negotiate. She promised she would never bring up Jason again. She promised she would respect my schedule. I didn't budge. I told her that once the threat of leaving is on the table, the trust is gone. I spent the night on the couch. The next morning, I helped her carry her boxes to her car. She kept stopping on the stairs, waiting for me to tell her to stay. Every time she looked at me, I just pointed toward the parking lot. A week later, she started sending me long emails. She told me she was seeing a therapist and realized she had abandonment issues. She asked if we could go to dinner and talk about a fresh start. I didn't reply. Then the tone changed. She started texting me photos of her out at bars, trying to make me jealous. She sent a picture of a drink and a guy's hand in the frame with the caption that she was finally being treated right. I blocked her number. The weirdest part was seeing her at my gym a month later. She had signed up for a membership at the place I've gone to for years just to be near me. She walked up to my treadmill and told me that if I didn't talk to her right then, she was going to move to a different city and I'd never see her again. I didn't even slow down my pace. I just looked at the exit sign and told her the doors were open. She stood there for a minute, realized I wasn't going to stop running, and walked out. I haven't seen her since. My Thursday nights are a lot quieter now, and I haven't missed a single game. The reality is that things with Chloe didn't just break that afternoon. They had been fraying for a long time. When you're an electrician, you learn to look for the hot spots. You look for the wires that are humming too loud or the outlets that are charred around the edges. I should have seen the burn marks on our relationship 6 months in. It started with small things. I'd be on a job site, elbow deep in a junction box, and she'd call 3 times in a row. If I didn't answer because my hands were literally live, she'd send a text saying, "I guess the wires are more important than me." I used to laugh it off. I'd tell her, "Yeah, Chloe, they are, because these wires pay the rent." But she didn't think it was funny. She had this way of making everything a competition. My job, my friends, my mom, my fitness, they were all opponents she had to beat to prove I loved her. The Jason thing wasn't new either. He was a guy in her marketing firm, some junior account manager who wore vests and talked about disrupting the industry. She'd bring him up whenever I did something she didn't like. If I wanted to watch a game on a Sunday afternoon instead of going to a botanical garden, she'd mention how Jason had invited her to a wine tasting and how he really values quality time. For 2 years, I lived in a state of low-level anxiety. I was always checking my behavior against her potential reactions. I'd be at the gym, and instead of focusing on my squat form, I'd be thinking about whether I'd been gone too long. I'd be at work, and I'd feel a pit in my stomach when my phone buzzed, wondering if it was a checking in text or a "why aren't you answering" text. When I walked out that door for the championship game, it wasn't a snap decision. It was the sound of a circuit breaker finally tripping. I was done. The game itself was surreal. The gym smelled like high school floors and stale Gatorade. My teammates were all hyped up, chest bumping and talking trash. Usually, I'm the calm one, the guy who directs the floor. But that night, I played with a kind of cold precision. I hit 4 3-pointers in the first half. Every time the ball left my hand, I felt lighter. I realized while I was running back on defense that I hadn't thought about Chloe for 40 minutes. I hadn't worried about her being mad. I hadn't worried about Jason. I was just a guy playing basketball, and it felt like I was breathing real air for the first time in years. When I got home and found her with that empty suitcase, the manipulation was so transparent it almost made me sad. She had it sitting on the bed, perfectly positioned so I'd see it the second I walked in. She hadn't packed a single sock. She was just holding the thread over my head like a toy. "You're late," she said. Her eyes were red, but they weren't soft. They were sharp. "The game went into overtime," I said. I started taking off my shoes. "We won by 2. I don't care about the game, Mark. I've been sitting here thinking about our future, about Jason." "Go then," I said. I didn't even look up. "If you think Jason is the guy who's going to make you happy, go find out. I'm going to take a shower." The silence that followed was heavy. She expected a fight. She expected me to grab the suitcase, close it, and tell her I couldn't live without her. When I just walked into the bathroom and turned on the water, I heard her let out a frustrated scream. The breakup was messy because she wouldn't let it be clean. Over the next few days, as she moved her stuff out, she tried every tactic in the book. First was the "I'm the victim" phase. She told me I was cold. She told me I was throwing away 2 years over a misunderstanding. She told her parents I'd kicked her out because I wanted to be a bachelor again. Her dad actually called me, sounding confused. "Mark, what's going on? Chloe says you're having some kind of midlife crisis?" "Mr. Henderson," I said. "Chloe told me she was going to leave me for a coworker because I went to a basketball game I told her about weeks ago. I just told her to go ahead and do it. I'm not angry. I'm just finished." He was quiet for a second. "She said that?" "Yeah, she says it a lot." "Oh," he said. He sounded tired. "I see. Well, good luck, son." Then came the "I'm changing" phase. This was when the email started. She sent me links to articles about attachment styles. She told me she'd booked a session with a therapist named Dr. Eris. She wrote these long, rambling paragraphs about how her childhood made her crave validation and how she used Jason as a shield to protect herself from the fear of me leaving. It was all very logical, but it didn't change anything. Knowing why someone stabs you doesn't make the hole in your chest go away. "I'm glad you're getting help, Chloe," I replied once. Just once. "But I'm not the person who can help you through this. We're done. Please stop emailing me. I That's when the revenge phase started. The bar photos, the guy's hand in the frame, the accidental Venmo requests for things like dinner at our favorite spot. It was so predictable it was almost boring. I knew her patterns. I knew that the guy in the photo was probably some poor soul she'd met 10 minutes prior, or maybe it actually was Jason, and he was finally realizing what he'd signed up for. I spent my newly found free time leaning into my routine. I took on extra shifts at work. There was a big commercial project, a new warehouse on the south side, that needed a lead foreman for the wiring. It was 12-hour days, 6 days a week. I loved it. I loved the exhaustion. I loved the feeling of being productive and not having to check my phone once. Then came the gym incident. I've been going to Ironworks for 5 years. It's a gritty place. No juice bar, no fancy towels, just heavy iron and people who are there to work. Chloe hated it. She used to call it the dungeon and complained that it smelled like a locker room. She had a membership at a high-end yoga and Pilates studio uptown. So when I saw her on the elliptical while I was warming up on the treadmill, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. She was wearing a matching neon workout set that looked like it cost more than my first car. She wasn't even sweating. She was just staring at me. I ignored her. I put my headphones in and turned up the volume. About 20 minutes into my run, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I didn't stop. I just looked over. She was standing there, arms crossed, looking furious. I pulled one earbud out. "I'm moving," she said. "No, hello? No, can we talk? Just the threat." "Okay," I said. I kept my pace at 6.5 miles per hour. "Did you hear me? I'm moving to Chicago. My firm has an opening. If I go, that's it, Mark. We're never going to see each other again. I'll be gone for good." I looked at the timer on the treadmill. I had 10 minutes left in my interval. "The 1 to 90 is a straight shot," I said. "Traffic sucks around Gary, though. You should leave early." She looked like I'd slapped her. Her lip trembled. "You're really just going to let me go? After everything?" "Chloe," I said, finally slowing the treadmill down to a walk so I could look her in the eye. "You've been going for months. You've been threatening to leave since the second month we started dating. You used it as a tool to get your way. The problem is, you used it so many times that I eventually realized I actually wanted you to do it." "I was just trying to get you to see me," she yelled. A few guys at the bench press station looked over. "I saw you," I said. "I saw exactly who you are, and I don't want it. Good luck in Chicago." I hit the start button again and ramped the speed back up. She stood there for another minute, probably waiting for the movie moment where I'd jump off the machine and pull her into a hug. It never happened. She eventually turned around and walked out of the gym. I found out later from a mutual friend that she didn't move to Chicago. She didn't even leave her job. It was just another ultimatum, another fire. She tried to start to see if I'd play the fireman. A few months passed. The warehouse project finished up, and I got a nice bonus. I bought myself a new truck, nothing flashy, just a solid Ford F-150 that wouldn't die on me. Life got quiet, in a good way. I still play in the league. We didn't win the championship last season. We lost in the finals, but we're back at it this year. I'm still the starting point guard. Last Thursday, we had a late game. It was raining hard, one of those cold, gray autumn nights. After the game, I was sitting in my truck, letting the heater blast while I waited for the windshield to defrost. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I thought it might be a client with an emergency. "Hello? Mark?" It was her. Her voice sounded different, flat, defeated. "Chloe, it's late. I know. I'm at that bar we used to go to. The one with the cheap wings. I'm here with Jason." I waited. I didn't say anything. "He's boring, Mark," she whispered. "He does everything I say. He never fights with me. He never chooses anything over me. I've spent every night for the last 4 months getting exactly what I told you I wanted." "Sounds like you won then," I said. "I'm miserable," she sobbed. "I'm so miserable. He has no spine. I can't respect him. I keep trying to make him angry, to make him stand up for himself, and he just apologizes." I felt a flash of pity for Jason. He was the guy I used to be, before I grew a pair. He was the guy living in the cage she'd built, thinking that if he just followed the rules, he'd eventually be loved. "That's not my problem anymore, Chloe," I said. "I'm not the person you call when your latest project fails. Leave Jason alone. He doesn't deserve to be your punching bag just because you're bored." "I just miss you," she said. "No, you don't," I said. "You miss the feeling of winning. You miss the power you had over me. But that circuit is dead. There's no power left." I hung up and blocked that number too. I put the truck in gear and drove home. The apartment was dark when I got there, and it was clean. No suitcases on the bed, no traps set in the living room. Just my gear, my life, and a quiet night's sleep. I've realized that some people don't know how to love without a hostage situation. They think that if they aren't threatening to leave, they aren't being valued. But once you stop being afraid of the exit, those people lose their only weapon. I'm not looking for anyone new right now. I'm enjoying the silence. I'm enjoying the fact that when I decide to go to the gym, or work a late shift, or play a game of ball, the only person I have to answer to is myself. The silence of a clean apartment is something you don't appreciate until you've lived in a war zone. For 2 years, I came home expecting an ambush. I'd pause at the front door, take a breath, and brace myself for whatever test Chloe had set up. Now, I just walk in, toss my keys on the counter, and listen to the hum of the refrigerator. It's the best sound in the world. About 2 months after that last phone call, I was at work on a residential remodel. It was an old Victorian house with wiring that looked like a bird's nest of frayed cloth and copper. It was tedious, frustrating work, but I liked the logic of it. You find the source, you trace the line, you fix the break. Everything has a beginning and an end. My apprentice, a kid named Leo, was helping me pull some new Romex through the studs. He's 22, engaged, and spends half his lunch break arguing with his fiancée on the phone. "She's mad because I want to go fishing with my dad on Saturday," Leo said, leaning against a ladder. "She says Saturday is our wedding planning day. We've been planning this thing for a year, Mark. How many times can you talk about flowers?" I stripped the end of a wire and didn't look up. "Did you tell her you were going?" "I told her I'd think about it. Now she's saying if I go, it shows I'm not committed to the marriage." I stopped what I was doing. I looked at him. He looked tired. He had that same hollowed-out look I used to see in the mirror every morning. "Listen to me, Leo," I said. "The second you let someone turn your hobbies or your family into a loyalty test, you've already lost. If you don't go fishing on Saturday, she'll find something else for you to give up next Saturday. Then it'll be your friends. Then it'll be your truck. One day you'll wake up and you won't even recognize the guy in the mirror because you've shaved off every part of yourself just to keep her happy." He stared at me, "But I love her." "You can love someone and still have a backbone," I told him. "In fact, if you don't have a backbone, they'll eventually stop loving you anyway. They'll just resent you for being a doormat." He ended up going fishing. His fiancée threw a fit, threatened to move back in with her mom, and then, when he didn't cave, she showed up at his house on Sunday with breakfast. It's funny how that works. Most people don't actually want a puppet. They just pull the strings to see if they'll break. A few weeks later, I ran into someone I didn't expect to see, Jason. I was at a hardware store, grabbing a box of wire nuts and some electrical tape. I saw a guy in a quilted vest standing in the plumbing aisle, staring at a display of faucet heads like they were written in ancient Greek. It was him. He looked thinner than he did in the photos Chloe used to show me. He looked like he hadn't slept in a month. I could have walked the other way. Part of me wanted to, but I felt a weird sense of brotherhood with the guy. He was the one who had taken over my watch. "You need the Delta ones," I said, pointing to the shelf. "They're easier to install and the gaskets last longer. He jumped a little, then recognized me. He looked like he wanted to run. Mark, he said. His voice was shaky. Hey, Jason. We stood there in the middle of the aisle. It was awkward as hell. He kept shifting his weight, looking at his shoes. So, I said, how's it going? He let out a short, dry laugh. It's a lot. She's a lot. I know. She told me you were a jerk, Jason said, finally looking up. She told me you were emotionally unavailable and that you prioritize basketball over your own future. But the more time I spend with her, the more I think I'm the one who's unavailable. I'm not allowed to be available to anyone else. Not my friends, not my work, just her. She's still doing the ultimatum thing? I asked. Jason nodded. Every day. If I don't answer a text in 5 minutes, she's done. If I want to go to the gym, she's moving to Chicago. Does she actually have an office in Chicago? No, I said. She doesn't. Jason sighed, and it sounded like a tire losing air. I don't know how you did it for 2 years. I'm 4 months in, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. She keeps talking about you too, comparing me to you, usually to tell me how much better I am, but it feels like she's just trying to convince herself. Here's some advice, man, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. The next time she says she's leaving, let her. Don't chase her. Don't apologize. Just say okay, and go back to whatever you were doing. The look on her face will be worth it, I promise. He didn't say anything, but I saw a little spark in his eyes. I bought my supplies and left. I don't know if he stayed with her, or if he finally walked away, but it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. The playoffs for the new season started last week. We were playing the top-seeded team, a bunch of guys in their early 20s who run like they have infinite lungs. My knees were aching, and my back was tight from a long day of pulling wire, but I felt good. During halftime, I checked my phone. It's a habit I'm trying to break, but I saw a notification, an Instagram DM from a burner account, no profile picture. I saw you at the hardware store. You looked happy. I hate that you're happy without me. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt a deep sense of boredom. The drama had become a repetitive script. I didn't block it. I just deleted the message and put the phone back in my bag. We won the game. I hit a buzzer-beater layup that nearly blew my hamstrings out, but we won. Afterward, the guys went out for beers. I sat there in the corner of the booth, listening to them complain about their wives, their kids, and their jobs. I realized that everyone has some kind of weight they're pulling. The trick is making sure it's a weight that's worth the effort. I drove home around midnight. The streets were quiet. When I got to my building, I saw a car parked across the street that looked familiar. A silver sedan. Chloe's car. She was sitting inside, the glow of her phone lighting up her face. She was watching the entrance to my building. She didn't see me pull into the alleyway to get to my parking spot in the back. I sat in my truck for a second. My heart started to race. That old familiar panic trying to claw its way back up. I thought about going over there. I thought about asking her what she wanted, or telling her to go home, or calling the cops. Then I remembered what I told Jason. I just turned off my engine. I walked through the back entrance of the building, went up to my floor, and didn't even look out the front window. I took a shower, iced my knees, and went to bed. The next morning, the car was gone. There will always be people like Chloe, people who think that love is a series of power plays and that intimacy is built on the fear of loss. But once you realize that you're okay on your own, that a Thursday night basketball game is a valid thing to value, and that your peace of mind is non-negotiable, they lose their power. I still have that championship trophy from the night she tried to make me choose. It's sitting on my bookshelf, a little piece of plastic and gold-painted wood. To anyone else, it's just a rec league trophy. To me, it's a reminder of the night I stopped being a hostage. Winter hit the city hard in November. As an electrician, winter means two things: emergency calls for heaters that died at 3 a.m., and a lot of work on industrial sites where the wind cuts through the unfinished walls like a razor. I was spending most of my days on a new high-rise project downtown, pulling heavy-gauge wire through freezing conduits. My hands were cracked, my knuckles were swollen, and I was perpetually tired. One Tuesday, I was finishing up a panel when my foreman, a guy named Miller, who's been in the trade for 30 years, leaned over. "You're staying late tonight, right?" he asked. "We need to finish this floor before the inspectors come tomorrow." Usually I'd say yes, but it was my mom's 65th birthday. I'd booked a table at a steakhouse she liked. "Can't do it, Miller. I've got family stuff." In the past, saying those words would have triggered a reflex. I would have expected a fight. I would have expected a guilt trip. Miller just nodded. "Fair enough. Get it done first thing tomorrow." I drove to the restaurant and met my mom. She looked good. We talked about her garden and my sister's kids. Halfway through the meal, she looked at me over her wine glass. "You look different, Mark," she said. "How so?" "Just tired from work." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You look settled. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes anymore. You used to be so twitchy, like you were waiting for a bomb to go off." I hadn't even realized it. The twitch was gone. The phantom vibration in my pocket, the one that used to make my stomach drop because it meant another 4-0 text argument, had finally stopped. "I'm just enjoying the steak, Mom," I said. A few weeks later, I was at the grocery store getting stuff for the week. I was in the frozen food aisle when I saw a woman standing by the pizza. She had her back to me, but I recognized the coat. It was a long wool camel coat I'd bought Chloe for our second anniversary. My first instinct was to turn the cart around, but I caught myself. I wasn't that guy anymore. I kept walking. As I passed her, she turned. It wasn't Chloe. It was a stranger, maybe a few years older, looking at labels on a box of pepperoni pizza. She caught me looking and gave me a small, polite smile. "Do you know if these are any good?" she asked, holding up a box. "They're okay," I said, "but the one next to it is better. More sauce." "Thanks," she said. She put the pizza in her basket. "I'm Sarah." "Mark." "Well, Mark, thanks for the tip. Have a good night." She walked away, and that was it. A normal interaction with a normal person. No hidden meaning, no test, no drama. It was a reminder that the world is full of people who aren't looking for a fight. The real test came a week before Christmas. I was at the gym, finishing a set of shoulder presses, when I saw a familiar figure by the weights. It wasn't Chloe, it was Jason. He looked different. He'd shaved his head, and he'd put on some actual muscle. He looked like he'd been eating and sleeping again. He spotted me and walked over. "Hey," he said. He sounded solid. "You look better, man," I said, sitting up on the bench. "I did it," he said. He didn't have to explain what it was. 3 weeks ago, she did the thing. She told me she was going to spend Christmas with her ex-boyfriend because I wouldn't take her to some fancy gala her firm was throwing. She said he still loved her and would treat her like a queen. And I told her to have a great time. Jason grinned. I told her I'd help her pack her bags. She lost her mind, Mark. She threw a lamp. She called me every name in the book. But the second I didn't chase her, it was like the air went out of her. I haven't talked to her since. Blocked her on everything. We ended up grabbing a protein shake at the counter. He told me he'd moved into a small studio apartment near his office. It was tiny, he said, but it was quiet. He sounded like a man who'd just been released from prison. "She tried to call me from a work phone last week," Jason said. I hung up. It felt incredible. I felt a genuine sense of pride for the guy. We'd both survived the same storm. The year ended quietly. New Year's Eve was just me and a few guys from the basketball league. We watched the ball drop at a local pub, had a few drinks, and went home. No screaming matches in the car. No tears about not being romantic enough. Just a clean start to a new year. In February, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. I opened it over the trash can. "Mark, I'm in Chicago now. For real this time. The firm transferred me. I thought moving would help, but everything reminds me of of what we had. I know I was hard to deal with. I'm still in therapy. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know how to be happy, so I made sure you weren't either. I hope the basketball is going well. Chloe, I read it twice. It felt like reading a letter from a character in a book I'd finished a long time ago. I didn't feel the need to reply. I didn't feel the need to save it. I dropped it into the trash, watched the lid swing shut, and went to get my gym bag. By March, the transition was total. Spring was starting to crawl back into the city, and the ground was thawing out. I was busy with a new contract, wiring a series of high-end lofts in an old warehouse district. It was precision work, exposed conduit, designer lighting. Everything had to look like art. I liked it because it required absolute focus. One slip of the pliers and you'd scratch a custom fixture that cost more than my monthly mortgage. I was up on a lift, tightening a bracket, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't look at it. I haven't had a reaction to a phone buzz in months. When I finally climbed down for my coffee break, I saw a text from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Mark the electrician? I replied. Yeah, who's this? It's Sarah, from the grocery store. The one who didn't know how to pick a pizza. I leaned back against the brick wall and smiled. I hadn't thought about her since that night, but I remembered the interaction. It had been so effortless. No barbs, no hidden hooks. I found out later she'd gotten my number from the bulletin board at the gym where I'd posted my business card for side jobs. She actually needed some work done on her kitchen outlets. I went over to her place the following Tuesday. It was a small, bright apartment on the north side. It smelled like clean laundry and actual coffee, not the stale, burnt stuff Chloe used to leave in the pot for me to clean up. I promise I'm not stalking you. Sarah laughed as she let me in. I just moved in, and half the kitchen doesn't have power. I saw your card and remembered the guy who saved me from bad frozen pizza. I spent 2 hours working on her kitchen. The wiring was old, but simple. While I worked, we talked. She was a teacher. She liked hiking. She had a dog named Buster who spent the entire time trying to sit on my boots. There was no pressure. No one was checking their watch. No one was making passive-aggressive comments about how long the job was taking. When I finished, she offered me a glass of water. What do I owe you? She asked. I gave her the standard rate. She paid it, thanked me, and then asked, are you still playing basketball on Thursdays? Every week, I said. Good, she smiled. Maybe I'll catch a game sometime. My brother plays in a league too. I left that night feeling light. It wasn't a spark or some cinematic explosion. It was just a pleasant evening with a pleasant person. It made me realize how much of my life I'd spent in defensive mode, waiting for the next strike. April came around, and the basketball league was winding down. We were in the semifinals. The gym was packed. The air was thick with the smell of floor wax, and the tension was high. I was bringing the ball up the court, looking for a lane, when I saw someone sitting in the third row of the bleachers. It was Jason. He wasn't alone. He was sitting with a girl I didn't recognize, someone who looked like she actually enjoyed being there. He caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. He looked happy, truly happy. We won the game by 6 points. Afterward, Jason stayed behind to talk to me while his date headed toward the exit. I just wanted to say thanks, Mark, he said, for what you said at the hardware store. It took me a few weeks to really hear it, but once I did, everything changed. You look good, Jason, I said, wiping sweat off my face with my jersey. She's still trying to get in touch? She tried the I'm in the hospital move a month ago, Jason said, rolling his eyes. I called the hospital to check. She wasn't there. I didn't even call her back to call her out on it. I just went to sleep. That was the moment I knew I was cured. We shook hands. He walked out to meet his date, and I headed to the locker room. As I was walking to my truck, I saw a familiar figure standing by the gate. My heart didn't jump. My stomach didn't drop. It was just an observation. Chloe, she looked tired. The Chicago thing had obviously been a lie, or a very short-lived reality. She was leaning against her car, watching the players leave. When she saw me, she straightened up. Mark, she said. Chloe. I didn't stop walking. I opened my truck door and threw my bag inside. I saw Jason, she said, her voice trembling. He told me he saw you. He told me you guys were friends now. We have a lot in common, I said, looking at her over the roof of the truck. I'm not with anyone, Mark. The Chicago job fell through. I'm back. I've been thinking a lot about that championship game. I should have been there. I was wrong. It was the apology I'd waited 2 years to hear. And the weirdest part was, it meant absolutely nothing to me. It was like someone offering me a refund for a product I'd already thrown in the trash. It doesn't matter, Chloe, I said. Whether you were wrong or right isn't the point anymore. The point is that I don't care. I don't wake up wondering if you're mad. I don't go to sleep wondering if you're leaving. I just live. Can we just get a drink? One drink. To talk like adults. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see a villain or a toxic partner. I just saw a person who was desperately trying to find a way to feel important again. No, I said firmly. We've had all the talks we're ever going to have. You used your last ultimatum at the gym, remember? You said if I didn't talk to you then, I'd never see you again. I'm just holding you to your word. I got into the truck and started the engine. She stood there for a second, her face twisting into that familiar look of rage, the how dare you look, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing it. I backed out of the spot and drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. When I got home, I had a text from Sarah. The kitchen outlets are still working perfectly. My brother's team lost their game tonight, so I told him he needs to take lessons from the pizza guy. See you Saturday for that hike? I typed back, see you Saturday. The hike with Sarah was on a Saturday in late April. It was one of those days where the air is still crisp, but the sun actually has some weight to it. We went to a trail about an hour outside the city, a rugged loop that climbed up a ridge overlooking the river. I kept waiting for the catch. I kept waiting for her to complain about the mud, or tell me I was driving too fast, or ask why I hadn't complimented her hiking boots, but it never happened. She just hiked. We talked about her students, my weirdest electrical service calls, and the best places to get a sandwich in the city. At the summit, we sat on a flat rock and shared a bottle of water. You're very quiet, Mark, she said, squinting into the sun. But it's not a weird quiet. It's like you're actually listening to the woods, instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. I spent a long time in a loud house, I said. I'm still getting used to the silence. She didn't pry. She didn't ask me to elaborate or turn it into a deep dive into my psyche. She just nodded and pointed out a hawk circling over the valley. It was easy. That's the only word for it. It was easy. When I got back to the city that evening and dropped her off, she leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. I had a great time, she said. Call me for the next game? Count on it, I said. I drove home feeling like a version of myself I hadn't seen since I was 20. But as I pulled onto my street, I saw a familiar car parked in my spot. It wasn't Chloe's silver sedan. It was a beat-up black SUV I recognized from the gym. It was Jason. He was leaning against the hood, looking agitated. I pulled up next to him and rolled down the window. Jason, everything okay? He looked over, and I saw a dark bruise forming under his left eye. My heart sank. What happened, man? She showed up at my place, Jason said, his voice thick. I told her to leave. I told her it was over. She started screaming, grabbing things. I tried to usher her toward the door, and she swung a heavy glass candle at me. Then she called the cops and told them I hit her. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. This was the nuclear option. This was the final move in the playbook. Did they arrest you? I asked. No, Jason said, shaking his head. The neighbors saw the whole thing through the window. They told the officers I never laid a hand on her. They saw her throw the candle. The cops told her if she didn't leave, they'd take her in for filing a false report. She left, Mark. Mark, but she was laughing. She looked me in the eye and said, "Now you'll never forget me." I got out of the truck and stood with him. "She's desperate, Jason. She's losing her grip on everyone she used to control. This isn't about you. It's about her realizing she's powerless. I just wanted to warn you," he said. "If she's doing this to me, she's coming for you next. You were the one who ruined her, in her head. You're the one who taught me how to leave. I'm not worried," I said. And I realized, as the words left my mouth, that I meant them. 3 days later, I was at a job site when my foreman told me there was a woman at the security gate claiming to be my sister with an emergency. I didn't have a sister. I walked down to the gate. Chloe was standing there, looking disheveled. Her hair was a mess, and she wasn't wearing her usual designer labels. She looked like she'd been vibrating on a high frequency for a week straight. "Mark," she hissed when she saw me. "You told Jason to leave me. You're the reason my life is falling apart." "I didn't tell him anything he didn't already know, Chloe," I said, keeping the gate between us. "Go home." "I have photos," she said, pulling her phone out. "Photos of us. Photos of things I can tell your boss. I can tell them you steal materials. I can tell them you're unsafe." I looked at her, and I didn't feel fear. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion. "Go ahead," I said. "My boss is right over there. His name is Miller. He's the guy in the yellow vest. Go tell him whatever you want. But before you do, you should know that I've already filed a restraining order based on the police report from Jason's apartment and your constant emails. If you don't leave this property in the next 60 seconds, the site security is going to call the precinct and you'll be leaving in handcuffs." It was a bluff. I hadn't filed the order yet, though I had the paperwork on my dashboard. But the threat of a consequence she couldn't manipulate was enough. She stared at me, her mouth hanging open. She looked for a crack, a moment of hesitation, a sign that she could still pull my strings. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, looking at her like she was a faulty circuit I'd already marked for replacement. "I hate you," she spat. "I know," I said. "That's usually what happens when someone stops playing your game." She turned on her heel and stomped toward her car. She peeled out, her tires screeching against the gravel. I walked back to the lift. I picked up my tools. I finished the wiring on the 4th floor. That Thursday, Sarah came to the game. She sat right behind our bench. Every time I looked back, she gave me a small, encouraging nod. I didn't play the game of my life. I didn't hit a buzzer beater. I played a solid, quiet game. We won by 4. Afterward, as we walked out to the parking lot, the night air felt different. It didn't feel heavy with the expectation of a fight. It felt open. "You okay?" Sarah asked as we reached my truck. "You seemed a little distracted in the 3rd quarter. Just thinking about how much I like my life right now," I said. "I haven't seen Chloe since that day at the gate. I heard through the grapevine she finally moved not to Chicago, but back to her parents' place 3 states away. Jason is doing well. He's dating a girl who works at a library, and he started taking jujitsu. Sometimes I'll be working on a house, and I'll see a set of old, corroded wires that someone tried to patch together with electrical tape and a prayer. It looks fine on the surface, but underneath, it's a fire waiting to happen. Most people are afraid to rip it out because it's a lot of work and it's messy. They'd rather just live with the flicker. But I'm an electrician. I know that the only way to fix a bad circuit is to cut the power, rip out the rot, and start fresh." My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Pizza tonight? I'll let you pick the brand." I smiled, put the truck in gear, and drove home. By May, the city had fully opened up. The high-rise project downtown was nearing completion, and my days were spent in the final trim-out phase, the part of the job where everything finally comes to life. It's the most satisfying part of being an electrician. You flip a master switch, and an entire floor that's been dark for months suddenly floods with light. I was working on the penthouse suite when Miller, my foreman, walked in. He was holding 2 cups of coffee and actually looked relaxed for once. "The inspectors cleared the 4th and 5th floors this morning," he said, handing me a cup. "No notes. Cleanest wiring they've seen all year. You've been on a roll, Mark." "Just keeping my head down," I said. "It shows. Listen, when this wrap up, I'm putting you in for the lead on the Southgate development. It's a year-long contract. Benefits, bump in pay, and you get to pick your own crew." I took a sip of the coffee. A year ago, I would have hesitated. I would have thought about how a year-long commitment might interfere with whatever crisis Chloe was brewing, or how she'd hate that I was spending more time on a site 30 miles away. Now, I didn't even blink. "I'm in," I said. "Thanks, Miller." That evening, I met Sarah at a small park near the river. She brought her dog, Buster, who immediately tried to tackle me the second I got out of the truck. We walked along the water as the sun started to dip below the skyline. "I have to tell you something," Sarah said, looking a bit nervous, "and I don't want you to think it's weird." I felt that old, familiar tension start to creep into my neck. Here it comes, I thought. The catch, the ultimatum, the hidden drama. "Okay," I said, bracing myself. "I got a job offer," she said. "In the city, at a better school. It's a huge step up for me. But the reason I'm telling you is because, well, I almost turned it down because I didn't want to change our routine. We've been seeing each other for a few months now, and I really like what we have. I didn't want a new schedule to mess that up." I stopped walking. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't holding the job over my head. She wasn't using it as a weapon to see if I'd beg her to stay or demand she quit. She was just being honest about her life and how she felt about me. "Sarah," I said, "take the job. If we're good, and I think we are, a different schedule isn't going to break us. I work as an electrician. I live by a schedule. We'll just find a new one." She let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. "You're sure? It might mean fewer Thursday games for a while." "I'll survive," I laughed. "Just as long as you're still there in the bleachers when you can be." It was a conversation that lasted maybe 3 minutes. No screaming, no tears, no accusations of selfishness. Just 2 adults making a plan. It felt almost boring in its simplicity, and I loved every second of it. Life has a way of settling into a rhythm if you let it. Over the next few months, Sarah started her new job, and I started the Southgate project. We saw each other 3 nights a week. On Thursdays, she'd show up at the gym with a Gatorade for me, and we'd go for burgers afterward with Jason and his new girlfriend. Jason had become a regular at our games. He wasn't the greatest player. He had a habit of traveling whenever he got nervous, but he played hard. One night, while we were sitting in the pub after a win, he leaned over to me. "I saw her today," he whispered. I didn't have to ask who, where. Just at a stoplight. She was in a different car, something older. She looked normal, I guess. She didn't see me. I thought I'd feel something, anger, maybe a little bit of fear, but I just felt like I was looking at a stranger, like someone I'd met at a party once and couldn't quite remember their name. "That's the best way to feel," I said, and it was true. The power Chloe had over us didn't come from her personality or her beauty. It came from the space we allowed her to occupy in our heads. Once you evicted her, she was just another person stuck in traffic. I still have that shared digital calendar on my phone. Sometimes I'll accidentally scroll back a year or two and see the entries. Dinner with parents, mandatory. Jason's birthday, do not mention. Mark's game, maybe. I don't delete them. I keep them there as a reminder of the old wiring. It reminds me of the guy who was so afraid of being alone that he let someone else decide when he could breathe. Last week, Sarah and I were at her place, helping her move some furniture. I was installing a new dimmer switch in her living room, a little housewarming gift. Buster was asleep on my feet, and the radio was playing something low and acoustic in the background. "Mark?" she called from the kitchen. "Yeah?" I was thinking. "My parents are having a barbecue this Sunday. Just a small thing, nothing fancy." I froze, my screwdriver poised over the switch plate. I felt a cold ghost of a memory memory brush against my spine. I know it's your day off, she continued, and you usually like to just veg out and watch the pro games. So if you don't want to go, it's totally fine. I can just go for an hour and come back. No big deal. I finished tightening the screw and turned the power back on. The room filled with a warm, soft glow. I walked into the kitchen and saw her standing there, genuinely waiting for an answer, with zero hidden agenda. A burger sounds great, I said. What time do we need to be there? 6? She suggested. I'll be ready at 5:30, I said. She smiled, leaned in, and kissed me. No strings attached, no ultimatums, no threats of a replacement waiting in the wings. One afternoon, I was walking the site with Miller. We were checking the underground conduits before the concrete pour. It was hot, the kind of humid heat that makes your work shirt stick to your back by 9 in the morning. You're doing a hell of a job with these kids, Mark, Miller said, nodding toward my crew. They're actually listening to you. That's rare. I just tell them the truth, I said. If they mess up, we fix it. If they do it right, we move on. No games. No games, Miller repeated, wiping his brow. Simple way to live. Wish more people tried it. That evening, I was supposed to meet Sarah for dinner, but a transformer blew 2 blocks away, and the utility company needed a consultant on site to verify our connections. I was going to be stuck for at least 3 hours. I felt that old, familiar pit in my stomach as I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over her name. In the old days, this was a disaster. A late change in plans was an attack. It was proof that I didn't care. I could already hear Chloe's voice. Oh, so the power lines are your girlfriend now? I guess I'll just go eat by myself, or maybe I'll call Jason. I took a breath and sent the text. Hey, we've got an emergency on site. I'm going to be stuck here until at least 8. Really sorry about dinner. I locked my phone and braced myself. 5 minutes went by. 10. Then it buzzed. No worries at all. That sounds stressful. Do you want me to drop a sandwich off at the gate, or should I just save you some leftovers for when you get home? I stared at the screen. No guilt, no subtext. Just a person who understood that sometimes life happens. Leftovers are great, I typed back. See you later. I worked those 3 hours with a smile on my face. The lineman from the utility company probably thought I was a psycho, grinning while we were elbow deep in a blown out transformer, but I didn't care. The emergency wasn't an emergency anymore. It was just work. When I finally got back to my apartment, it was quiet. I let myself in, and there, sitting on the dining table, was a plate of chicken pasta covered in foil with a sticky note on top. Proud of you for getting the lights back on. See you in the morning. I ate that cold pasta sitting in the dark, watching the city lights through my window. I realized that for 2 years, I had been living in a house where the voltage was always surging. You never knew when a bulb was going to burst or a fuse was going to blow. Now, the current was steady. A week later, I was at the gym on a Tuesday. I was on the bench press, finishing my final set, when a shadow fell over me. I figured it was someone asking how many sets I had left. Mark? I racked the bar and sat up. It was a guy I hadn't seen in a long time. It was Chloe's brother, Ben. Ben and I had always gotten along. He was a quiet guy, a carpenter who worked mostly in cabinetry. He was the one who used to give me the look during family dinners when Chloe would start one of her rants. It was a look of shared sympathy, the look of 2 men who knew they were trapped in the same theater watching a bad play. Ben, I said, standing up and shaking his hand. Long time. Too long, he said. He looked uncomfortable. I heard about everything. From her, obviously, and then from my parents. I just wanted to come by and say, I'm sorry for the way she handled things. It's okay, Ben. It's in the past. She's not doing great, Mark, he said, leaning against the rack. She's back home, like you probably heard, but she's obsessed. She spends all day talking about how you trapped her and then abandoned her. My parents are exhausted. They've tried to get her into more intensive therapy, but she just tells them they're on your side. I felt a twinge of sadness for Ben and his folks. They were good people who were being held hostage by the same emotional terrorism I'd escaped. I can't help her, Ben, I said quietly. I know, he said. I'm not here to ask you to. Honestly, I'm here because seeing you leave was the first time I realized it was possible. I'm moving out next month, getting my own place in the city. I'm tired of the noise, man. Good for you, I said, truly. She hates that you're winning, Ben added before he left. She checks your social media, or whatever she can see of it like it's her job. She saw that picture of you and Sarah at the river. She smashed her phone that night. I hadn't even thought about it. I'd posted one photo of Buster the dog with Sarah's hand in the frame. To Chloe, that was a declaration of war. To me, it was just a nice Saturday. Tell your parents I say hi, I told him. And Ben, don't leave a forwarding address. He laughed. A real, genuine sound. I wasn't planning on it. That Thursday was the final game of the playoffs, the championship, the same game that had started the collapse a year ago. The gym was the same. The smell was the same, but I was a different man. When I stepped onto the court, I didn't feel the weight of a countdown clock. I wasn't wondering if I was going to get a "Where are you?" text at halftime. Sarah was there, sitting next to Jason and his girlfriend. They had a cardboard sign that said, "Go Pizza Guy," which was embarrassing as hell, but it made my teammates howl with laughter. The game was tight. We were down by 3 with less than a minute to go. I had the ball at the top of the key. In the past, I might have choked. I might have been thinking about the fight waiting for me at home and lost my focus. But I looked over at the bleachers. Sarah caught my eye and just winked. I drove to the hoop, drew the foul, and sank the layup. I hit the free throw to tie it. In overtime, we pulled away. When the final buzzer sounded, we were the champs. We didn't get a big trophy, just a little plastic cup and some t-shirts that were 2 sizes too small. But as I walked off that court and Sarah put her arm around my waist, I realized I'd already won the real prize months ago. I walked out of that gym, the same one I'd walked out of a year ago to find Chloe waiting with an empty suitcase. This time, the parking lot was quiet. The silver sedan was gone. The threats were gone. I tossed my bag into the back of my truck. Sarah climbed into the passenger seat, and Jason yelled from his car that he'd meet us at the bar. I looked at the gym doors one last time. I thought about the guy who used to be afraid of those doors opening. I thought about the guy who used to apologize for having a life. I didn't recognize him anymore. I started the engine, turned up the radio, and pulled out into the night. My Thursday nights are still loud, but it's the right kind of noise. And the best part? I don't have to check the calendar to know exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm right where I want to be.